Thank you, John. Wow, that's pretty cool. I would say it's the accent that did it, right? It's from Southern Alabama, in case you didn't know. Well, John, thank you to you and Charlie for this invitation and for considering me to be a speaker at this amazing event. And for me to follow someone like Father John, that is a tough thing. I would prefer next time we swap. But thank you for this time. What a privilege and honor it is for me to be here. And what I'm about to share with you is kind of a personal testimony, like kind of a little bit of the road that I've traveled. As all of us, we have our paths that we go on and we travel, and some of it's not a straight line. It's kind of a curvy path, and sometimes we stumble and fall. And so I want to share a little bit of my journey with you, and then how Regnum Christi and the Legion saved my life. And it was an incredible story, and just a wonderful journey. The main purpose of my talk is, what is a business as a noble vocation? We talk about vocation as our family and the consecrated life, but there's a concept as businessman or business owner or business person. We have a vocation. And what is that vocation? I've called it a calling to be a modern day apostle by using our businesses as a platform for ministry and evangelization. That's very different to what Harvard would teach you what business is about. It's all about return on investment and dog eat dog, and the guy with the most toys at the end wins, right? And that's really the way it is. But if you really think about in post-Christian paganism, Father, to your point, where are we going if we look at this beautiful facility here? If we look in Europe at the beautiful churches, they're empty. And there's a reason. There's a drift and a shift from Christianity to paganism. And we, as Regnum Christi members, are called to try to reverse that. That wasn't on my radar at all when I first started my journey. But I want to share some basic statistics with you that in the United States, only 30% of our employees go to church or are even Christian related. Only 30%. So 70% of our employees have no relationship with God at all. So many of us, as on-fire Christians who want to do evangelism, we want to go to Haiti, we want to go to these far-off countries and do mission work, right? The mission is in our own companies. 70% of our employees are lost. They don't go to church. And the crazy thing is the church has no way to get to them. They're out there. May hear a sermon every now and then on TV, but they just turn it off. But we are the modern day apostles as business owners to bring our faith to work in a real, authentic way that attracts people to our faith. I asked John to do a little survey of each of you when you signed up, just to give you this statistic. How many employees you had as direct reports, and how many employees within your circle of influence? I did the numbers. There were over 2,000 employees that are represented here that we, as this group today, have influence over. 2,000. In addition to that, their family members, if you look at an average family, is about 3 to 4 people. That's 8,000 souls that we have the capability through our work life to impact. That makes you think. So my journey is kind of a twisted one, and it started off with my dad. My dad started our company in 1958, and that's his first little savings book. And you'll see on the corner there is a $1. $1 he started the company with as a savings book. Today, we have 400 employees, and we have 3,000 clients spread in 26 countries. But it started off with $1. And his faithfulness to his faith, and teaching and bringing me up in the faith, that I one day could find a way to live out my faith. Along that journey, while I was in South Africa, whereas I'm originally from South Africa, he started off the business there. I was in prayer. We had a company in South Africa, and there was the dream to come to America and start a company in America. And I wanted to do that, but I wasn't sure. And I said, God, will you please send me a sign? I'm not very smart, so when you do send a sign, make it clear and uncertain. I want to really know. And he did. And I want to show you what happened. So on my way to work one morning, I stopped at a red light, and a car came over from the front and stopped like from here to where you are, Abel. And I thought, whoa, that's weird. A car would break down like that. The two back doors opened, and two guys jumped out with AK-47 machine guns. And I want to show you what happened. Here's a picture. You see, that's an armor-piercing bullet. It went through my door. On its way through my door, before it got through the door, it actually went through my shirt. See that pen? That's where the bullet went through my shirt. Can you imagine the feeling of God's providence in your life when a bullet goes a quarter of an inch from your skin but doesn't touch you? It's God sending you a message. And so I said, thank you, Lord, I got you. So, my encouragement to all of you, when you pray, ask God for clear, abundant messages, but not the use of violence. Be clear about that. So needless to say, off I went to the United States. And this is our facility today. We're a manufacturer of mining equipment, screening equipment for mines, particularly the gold, copper, diamond industry, coal industry. We sort out the big rocks from the little rocks. On the road and pavement in front here, we've got a quarry just down the road here where we screen the stones that are in that pavement. So that's how we're involved in all different industries. We have a facility in South Carolina and another one down in Santiago, Chile, and another one in Peru. So a total of about 400 employees spread throughout the world. So here I am in America. My business is growing. Everything is great. And I follow the Harvard business model. It's all about money, right? I lost my path. And it became about money. And I started to use people for my own purposes of growth. I started to step on people to climb the ladder, the corporate ladder. And it became a dark place. The business was thriving. It was doing great. But I'd lost my soul. I'd lost my path. And I remember one day, a gentleman by the name of Mark Connolly, actually a supplier of ours. And he was supplying power to our plant, Duke Energy. And he started talking, and we went around the plant and looked at all the power requirements. And he said to me at the end, Peter, are you happy? And do you have purpose with this business? I thought, what kind of supplier question is that, man? But what he was a Regnum Christi member undercover. And he dropped that seed on me. And I looked at him and I said, Mark, I can't really answer that I'm happy. I have a hole in my heart. And he said, I have a solution for you. Come to a retreat in Atlanta and I will help you. Well, that was the story, Father, yesterday, Father Bruce. You shared that concept of the mustard seed. The entire rest of the story is because one gentleman planted that seed of coming to a retreat in my heart. One small statement he made, and I'm going to share with you what happened as a result of that. He changed the trajectory of my life completely. Not only Mark, but because of the formation he received in Atlanta from the Regnum Christi priests. So it's a kind of a trickle-down effect. So on that first retreat that I went to, Father Paul Moreau asked a really interesting question. He said, what do you worship? I said, of course, God. He said, okay, we're going to test that. I want you to write down where you spend your time and your money. Draw a circle, and then divide that circle up into time and money, and we'll see who you really worship. Wow. This is what came up. On the left-hand side, you'll see the old Peter. When I drew that circle, what was I worshiping? Me. I was building the world around my selfish needs of pride and growth. There's a slight little sliver over there for church, for my family, and okay, I want to give back to the church. I'd give them a check every now and then. Now Teddy is on the top of that list. He gets a bigger check. He replaced that old check. And all he said to me, Peter, that check is fine. Just add like 3 zeros, man, and we're good. So during that retreat, I realized what I worshipped was something not God. God was a little slice in my life. And as we went through the retreat, I went to and I did a general confession. I don't know how many of you have done a general confession, but it's probably the most powerful thing that ever happened to in my life. And I went through pages and pages of sins. And I thought, wow, how could God ever forgive me? And Father helped me that moment to understand there's this concept of the divine ocean of mercy. Just think about that for a second, how big that ocean is. And all I needed was one drop. And at that moment, I still feel like today, it's been 15 years. I felt God embracing me and saying, my son, you've been prodigal, but come back. I want to show you a new way of life. What an incredible experience that I started. And that on the right-hand side is what happened to me. I saw God no longer as a slice, but at the core, the center of everything. And He needed to permeate everything, every part of my life. And it changed everything. And there were two fundamental principles that are summed up in the Bible very well. Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor. It's that simple. So I left saying, okay, well, who's my neighbor? Because I live on a farm, so I don't really have a lot of neighbors. Well, there's a lot of neighbors. And what I realized was in the parable of the Good Samaritan. That's who I needed to be. And I used that as the roadmap for everything you're going to see now, is that simple story. I was that Levite priest that was basically saw my employee laying in the ditch there and turned the other way or stepped over him to get up. But what I realized is I was to use the resources that I had, my donkey, to put the guy on the donkey, to take him to an inn, to use my resources, my finances, and circle of influence to enrich the life of this person. And what I realized for the first time, my employees were the guy in the ditch. And I was called to change everything. So coming back from that retreat, I said, wow, God, how do you want me to proceed? And this is the paradigm that happened for me. If you look at the FedEx logo, looks like that slide gone bye-bye. So what happened is, in my thinking, there were a couple of few things that were really important for me. The first one was the concept of stewardship. I did not own the business. Yes, I have a certificate that says I own it, but I'm not the owner. God has given me, like in the parable of the talents, He's given me a short time on earth with a few talents and said, I want you to take these talents and do something with them. So it's a sense of stewardship, not ownership. The second one is the responsibility. When you're given that responsibility, a gift and a responsibility are like the two edges of the same sword. So I realized now that I had a circle of influence. I had the ability to influence 400 employees and their families. What was I going to do with that? The next one was that we are called as Regnum Christi members to change the world through apostolic zeal, calling people through evangelism to a different way, to lead them closer to God. And I saw my platform as a company now differently. As a young boy, I was an altar server. And one day on the altar, I saw a light come through a stained glass, and it was St. Peter. And it looked right in my eyes, and I felt a calling to become a priest. But I ran from that calling. And in running from it, I said, but it's always in the back of my mind. And now suddenly I had the opportunity to be called. We're called to be priests, prophets, and kings. I had this new calling in my workplace to be the priest, to be an extension of the church, to bring God's love into their world, to show them what evangelism really looks like. So it changed my paradigm and the way I thought about things. Up until that point, I was what they would call a submarine Christian. What does that mean? That at work, there was no evidence that I was a Christian. At home, yes, I was going to Mass, I was in the front row with my 4 kids, and I was doing all that. But the moment Monday, 7 a.m. came, I dived. And I was gone the entire week. There was no evidence anywhere in my life. The analogy I'd like to give you, as being men, most of you are married, I have a ring on. Can you imagine in the morning if I say to my wife, goodbye, and I take the ring off and I put it on the counter and I say, I'll see you tonight. What do you think would happen? It will not end well. But why is it okay that we can do that with our relationship with Christ? We can literally strip ourselves of that ring that says we belong. This says I belong to my wife. I have a covenant with her. But I can do that with God. I can just strip it away. I want you just to think about that for a second. Is that something you're doing in your life? The bifurcation, the separation of our calling and our work. So when I finished the retreat, I left and I went to work. And I said, God, help me to do an important thing. There's 2 most important points or moments in our life. The moment we're born and the moment we figure out why. And that's called purpose. So I had to write down a purpose statement for our company, because if this company truly belonged to Christ, He needed to be on there somehow. On your tables, there's this little card, a little red card. I'd like you just to grab it for a second. So the red side is simple. It says who I am, blah, blah, blah. Every one of us has a card like that. But what makes this different is if you look on the back. The first statement says, Polydeck is a company founded and run on Christian principles. Do you know how hard it is to write the word Christian on a card in this world? I could have easily said, we're a company founded on virtue. We're a company that does good things on moral high ground. Adding that one word changed this entire card. So much so that I can tell you at least 20 miracles that happened as a result of that, and which I wrote a book, it's on your desk too, on what impact that has. So when we sat down and wrote the purpose of our company, we said, the purpose is to serve our customers and stakeholders with excellence. I mean, everyone can agree with that, right? I think we all can do that. So that we can achieve profitable growth. That's pretty much a Harvard go-to. But now changes. It says that profitable growth is to enable us to create eternal value. Wow. Most people look at that and say, what? What is that? How do you define eternal value? By conducting our business and caring for our people in a way that honors God. That changes everything. So I came up with this card, and I remember coming to our sales team and saying, guys, you know, I've come back from this retreat. I have this really cool card, and I'm giving you this new card. And they looked at this and said, excuse me, sir, it's an awesome idea, but can we have 2 cards? One like this and one without all this blah, blah, blah on it. And that's where the rubber meets the road, right? I had to say what I truly believe. Coming back from that retreat, I was fortified. I was on fire. It was almost like me looking off the edge of a cliff saying, is this real? God, will you really save my life if I jump? Are you the master of the universe or not? Because on here I'm saying you're the master of the universe, but do I truly believe it? So the rubber met the road, and I said, guys, I'll put this on my card first. And I'm about to go to a trip to Indonesia, where our largest client is, who happens to be Muslim. How do you think that's going to go down? So that's where the rubber meets the road, right? And my legs are like, woo, this is real. So I went there, gave him my card, spoke about our company and what we do. We had about 10% of the business there. It's one of the largest mines on the planet. And he took me around the plant and showed me all the things that they've got problems with. And we came back and we had several tests going on. And the tests, thank God, were all successful. And he came back, and that night we went down to the village where I slept. And he said to me, Peter, I read your card. You can imagine. I was like, oh, God. Just dropped me off at the airport. It was nice knowing you. Peace out. And what he said to me is, I appreciate the values that you have. I appreciate what you stand for. I appreciate doing business with someone who I can trust. And I want to take you home tonight to my house, and I want to introduce you to my family. And we went in there, and the first thing he did was wash his hands and put little mats down, and him and his family prayed on little carpets. And I thought to myself, who am I to question this man? And we went through that evening. The next day we went to the plant. He called his team together and he said, I would like to ask you what you think of Peter's product and how it's doing here. And they said, no, really good. He said, well, I'm going to introduce, ask your support. I've made a decision that we would like to use Polydeck as our sole supplier, 100% of the business, for the life of the mine. That's unheard of in our industry. You don't get a life of mine contract. I don't even know what that was. But that's what happens when you're faithful to God and you step out in courage and say, God, you are the master of the universe. And if I jump, you will catch me. And it's faith. You have to step out in faith. Just like Peter, when our Lord said to him, throw out the net. He said, Lord, really? Oh, yeah, there's no fish to hit. But that's where it's that step of faith, right? So when we got back to the plant and started to try to really implement this thing, I said, how am I going to do this? To make it universally accepted in our company, we have Hindus, Muslim, Buddhists, everyone in our company. And we started off with a very simple rule, that we're all children of God. And we all live by the golden rule. Love one another as you would love to yourself. That's how we started. And on that journey, as we continue down there, we had to find a structure to love and care for our employees. And what we did is we started this 9-box matrix. And in those 9 boxes, on the vertical, there's the physical, emotional, and spiritual components of our human beings that work in our company. And then there's the employees, their families, and our community. And what we did is we tithed. We put 10% of our profit. Again, you've got to put your money where your mouth is. 10% of our profits into this fund. And then asked a democratically elected group of individuals from every department in our company to run this fund. With a simple concept of honor God by caring for your fellow employees with love. That was the principle. And we've created all kinds of different programs within those 9 boxes. And one of the things that's important, and Father John mentioned it earlier, what helped you with your relationship with your dad was a moment of crisis. Your dad was at the end of his life saying, there's something really going on here. And it softens our hearts. There's a Pew study that says that 70% of people who come to faith in Christ after the age of 18 do so at a moment of crisis. So what we did is we designed a system here to identify and find out where the employees that are in the ditch lying there bleeding, let's find out when they're in those situations. When are their parents struggling? When are their teenage kids on drugs? When is the wife having an affair? When are these things going on? And let's bundle them in Christ's love and show authentically what love really looks like. Not just dollars, but kindness and compassion. There's an old saying, it says, I can't hear what you say until I know that you care. So what we decided was to bathe our employees, 400 of them, in a care matrix, in a marinade of love that comes from God. And we have programs, for example, a car repair fund. If your car breaks down as an employee, we give you 800 number. You call, we pick you up, we take your car, we repair it, no cost for you and for your spouse. We have programs for marriages, marriage retreats. We have mission trips that we go on to Nicaragua where we take our employees and their children to help build homes for impoverished, poor people. We have all kinds of things, drug addiction recovery, employees who struggle with drugs. We have a thing called Jumpstart where we hire incarcerated people from the prisons and give them second chances within our group of employees. So these are the programs we started to put out there. We also decided to build a chapel in the center of our business. And we decided to consecrate our business. So we had Mass, thanks to Abel Cruz, who's here all the way from Mexico, well, actually from Monterey and Houston. He's a world traveler, but he is dear friends with Alfonso Gonzalez, a dear, dear brother of mine. And Abel one day on a flight to the Philippines was reading a video about consecration. And he said to Alfonso, why don't we consecrate our company? The word consecration means to set something apart for a holy purpose. And they did. Qualfon, how many years ago was it, Abel?
2006.
2006. That was the year of my retreat. They were already doing it. And so we started that concept of consecration. So when I went on this journey, I invited all my employees to have a consecration mass amongst the machines. Imagine that. Not everybody came, but that's okay. You can't force people. You have to love them, and they must want to follow your faith because of the love they see and authenticity, not because of force. And that's what we do. We respect all our employees. Whatever their faith journeys are, we help them on their journey. We've helped build a Buddhist temple. We've helped build a mosque. We've helped all these different faiths to help them grow because we believe they're all children of God, and we're trying to help them, encourage them to find their way to heaven. We obviously believe in our Christian faith and we want to attract them to that, but we can't force them to do anything. In our company, because of these programs here, of our 400 employees, 102 employees today have an in-depth relationship with Christ as a result of being part of our company. And you ask me, well, how do you know 102? Well, we've got a chaplain. That's his job, to walk around and provide moments of encouragement to our employees every day, but in moments of crisis. And there are some really tough guys. I'll give you a great example. Was a guy who really tough, burly guy, and said he got everything together. And we found him sleeping under his machine. And we said, what's this up with the sleeping on the machine? He said, no, there's no problem. I'm just tired, blah, blah, blah. The next day, the pastor came by, the chaplain, and said, how are you doing? And tears started rolling down his face. He said, I got to be honest, I'm addicted to heroin. And I can't rid it. I've tried everything. I'm stuck. And so, because of that involvement, we put him on a drug rehabilitation program, sent him away for 12 weeks to a Christian rehabilitation center. After that, while he was away, we cut the grass, we took care of his family, we did everything to allow him to be there. We paid him, and we kept his job. On his return, he was a changed man. It changed his entire life. About a year later, we encouraged our employees to go to the soup kitchen. And as we went to the soup kitchen, this little boy comes and hugs my leg. And I'm like, hey, buddy, what's up? He says, I just want to say thank you, sir. I said, no, you're welcome. I don't know what. So he says, well, you saved my life. I said, what do you mean? He said, you helped my dad because he would come every day home and beat me and beat my mom. Today, he's taken us to church. And I just want to thank you. Thank you for saving my dad. That's a modern day apostle disguised as a businessman. That's what this mission is all about, is having the eyes of Christ and having the resources there in those moments of crisis to help these people find their way back to God. So what happens when you do this thing in your company? Harvard will tell you that you're wasting your time and effort and it's diluting your resources and a lack of focus. I call it God economics. These three dimensions back here, we have grown beyond our wildest dreams. God has blessed us with business. Right now, we're at 140% of our plan this year alone. We can't keep up. What happened to turnover of employees? Before this retreat, our turnover of employees was 25%. So in other words, every year, 25% of our employees would just leave. They say, Peter, peace out, man. This is not for me. Today, it's less than 3%. People want to stay. They want to be part of a culture where they're valued, where they're cared for, where their families are cared for, where there's a culture of family. That when someone's struggling, that we're there for them to help them and support them on their journey. And then the last one is productivity. When people feel engaged, they truly understand that there's more to life than just making widgets. That if a company is taking them to Nicaragua with their families, I can tell you story after story after story, and a lot of them are in that little book, of people's lives, employees and their families' lives being changed by this process that we have. And they feel connected to it. In this journey, when you feel purpose in your life, at your job, you give back. When you truly feel cared for, there's a study that says that in return for a paycheck, the average employee will give you 70% of their disposable effort, their effort. They come to work, you give me money and I give you work, right? What happens to the other 30%? It's called discretionary effort. When you truly can latch into the purpose and meaning of a person's life and give them value, help them feel cared for, help them grow in their spirituality, grow as individuals, promote them within the company, what happens? They engage. And when they truly engage, you get 100%, some 120%, and your company thrives. We have a statistic of revenue per person as a productivity measure. That measure, since the inception of this, has gone to over 25% of where it was. So we're 25% more productive than we were before. So I have news for Harvard and those boys. There's a new concept called God economics, and it really works. It changes people's lives in a really, really impactful way. So that's kind of the story, and what I've got on your tables is, for discussion purposes, is this little piece of paper. And a lot of you may say, well, okay, I don't own a business, so what can I do? So there's two sides to this piece of paper. One is for the business owner, because obviously as the business owner, you have the ability to influence the direction of the company, right? Well, what happens if you're the CFO? What happens if you're the sales manager? What happens if you are the delivery guy? What influence can you have over your business? Well, there's another side to this piece of paper, and it says, for business leaders and employees, there are so many things you can do to influence your company. Some of which I'll give you some brief examples in our company. There was a lady who was diagnosed with severe cancer, and she was headed towards, the doctor said, you got 3 months left to live. And she was about to go to surgery, and people in our company gathered around and started a prayer group in our little chapel and started to pray for her. Those are things that you can do. You don't have to own the business. You can start a prayer group. And if your company is not that way inclined, you can do it during lunch. You can do it after hours. Using the analogy of the ring, if I were to come to your offices, wherever you work, would I as a pagan be able to look in your office and see something that tells me who you belong to? That's a simple question. It's something you can think about. There's so many other different things that you can do. Just being encouraging. Father mentioned being kind. How you live out your authentic Christianity. If you truly live it out, people will want to know what is different about you. And they'll come and ask you, what is it? And that opens a door to be able to share your faith and share what you truly believe. There's also on the bottom of that page, there's a little QR code. If you own a business or if you are part of a senior leadership of a business, I'd encourage you just to use the QR code, and it'll lead you to an assessment, just a simple 10-question assessment. It helps you to see in various areas of the business how you're living out your faith, your calling to be an apostle in your company. It'll kind of just help you on that journey. So we're going to talk a little bit more about it tonight at the fireside chat, the influence that a spiritual director has. Father David Daly was a very important part of my life early on. And once he saw the evolution of this God-honoring economy that we were creating in our company, he said, during spiritual direction, one day he said, Peter, you need to find a way to multiply. And I thought to myself, well, what do you mean? He says, you need to take this beyond the walls of your company to truly evangelize. And so he encouraged me to start this thing called His Way at Work. And what that is, it's basically helping inspire and coach and help business owners to transform the culture of their companies with God at the center. And we have, through our journey, we've had quite an amazing journey. You can see over here, this was the consecration on the shop floor that we did several years ago. This was in Cancun this year. These are all CEOs who have now got on board with His Way at Work. Represented amongst that group is 150 companies who represent over 250,000 employees. Think about that for a second. The impact that Regnum Christi had through Mark Connolly on one guy has now impacted 250,000 people who have caring programs and have chaplains. Many of them have deacons from our church who have extra time on their hands and are now chaplaining these souls in times of crisis and helping them. Because if you look at what's happened to our church, paganism is evolving and it's killing the church. If you look, you think we're in bad shape, go out to California. And if you think they're in bad shape, go to Europe. I'm about to go to Paris to speak at a convention in Paris. Do you know their dilemma? Less than 1% go to church. 1%. And let me tell you, it's coming to the United States. It's an evolution. It is coming. The wave is coming. And if it's coming, what are we doing to prevent that tidal wave? What are we called as apostles, as business owners, as business leaders? We are called to be undercover apostles to bring about the kingdom of God in our circle of influence. This is the path that we have found is so effective. Because, with all due respect to the Padres, you can't get to my employees. The church cannot. They're on their own. They've decided to disenfranchise from the church. How do we get those people back to the church? By living authentic lives, caring for them in practical ways, and presenting the gospel truth of Jesus Christ to them. That's how we do it. And in our company, 25% of our employees today have a relationship with Christ as a result of that. Just imagine, these are modern day apostles disguised as business owners. And it's starting a revolution. Oops. If you look at here, we're over in 210 companies, 91,000 employees, and 365,000 family members that have been impacted by this journey. So what this really is, this is bridging that gap, that divide that the secular world wants to create. And we are those people to cross that bridge. I call it my small way of living out St. John Paul II, the new evangelization. This is what he meant. How are we going to reach the lost? Not through conventional ways anymore. People in droves are leaving the church. So we have to be the church for them in their environment. What's really, really cool for me is that the church is now seeing what we're doing as being part of what they are embracing as the new evangelization. I had the privilege and honor and incredible privilege of meeting our Holy Father, and he presented me with the Benementia Award for the work that we've done through His Way at Work. And as he took the little book, you can see the little book there, On page 17 of the book, there's a picture of me getting shot. And our Holy Father looked at that. He said, Peter, God saved your life for a reason. Your reason is to go create communities of love in companies across the world. That fire is in my heart, man. I want to be an apostle. I encourage you to be one too. To go out there and make this world a better place. It's expanded. There was the convention of international bishops in Lisbon. I was invited as the guest speaker at that event. And I shared this concept of the new evangelization with them. I got a standing ovation from bishops from 108 countries. We've been invited to come to places across the world with this because the church realizes people are in dark places and us as CEOs are the path to get to those dark places. So it's an incredible journey that we're on, and I can't thank the Legion enough. Father Sean, where are you? You and your team, I can't thank you enough for what you've done to change my life, for you and the other padres, Father Peter Devereaux, Father David Daly, and your support, Father, has been incredible. And Father John, thank you. We're collaborating with the Legion on building out a new way to reach the lost. And we're going to do that through the parishes. We've gotten permission now from several bishops of introducing this program as an association of consecrated business owners in each parish. And the parishes are opening their doors to us now. So Ryan Foley back there is our executive director of His Way at Work and a very dear and near to the Legion for many years with Mission Network. And he now works for His Way at Work. And he has some incredible creative thinking of how to touch this world in a positive way. And he'll share with you maybe later on this afternoon or this evening some of the ways that we're going through this consecrated method of consecrating first the business owner, then the business, and then having formation and support for business owners that go on this journey, because it's a lonely place. When you're out there, the world doesn't want you to be this maverick and apostle. They want to knock you down. And so we'll share with you a little later on what that looks like. And so for the discussion, this little paper on your desk is maybe a help for you to see what areas that you could get involved in your workplaces. This little book is a gift from us, from His Way at Work. It documents over 20 different miracles that happened as a result of this journey that we're on, that I can't explain or describe any other way than saying God's providence and miracles in our company. I just pray that you'll find it useful. If you are someone that maybe read it and you can hand it on, that's being a disciple, is encouraging another CEO or a business leader that's out there that's maybe on the verge like I was, that can maybe just introduce him to this concept. Teddy has introduced me to several people who've made tremendous changes in their businesses. So please use it as a way to be an apostle. So I appreciate your time. Thank you, and God bless.